All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Foremost Media Marketing Chat podcast. Excited to have this topic today. And with me, as always, is Jon Ballard. How are you, Jon?
Hey, good, Evan. Good to talk to you as usual. I'm excited about today's topic.
Yeah, this is one that, we do have, as a company, a lot of experience in, and you personally have a good amount of experience in it also. So, school district websites, right? And what's unique about them? What should you look for when choosing a partner? The actual content management systems, the way it's designed, the overall user experience on it. There's a lot that goes into a school district website.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we've done quite a few of them over the years. And the first question I usually ask is like, how do you want to organize this? Because a lot of districts, have a website, and then it's the main district, but then they have elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and how do you organize all that information, and how do you kind of make sure the right users are finding the right information, and then who's going to update it? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into just kind of figuring out what platform we should use, and kind of how we're going to structure it. So I think one of the things that we should talk about right away is like how users access the school site. And what we've kind of found over the years, and this could be elementary, high school districts, or even colleges. There's kind of four audiences. There's the students, obviously, there's the parents, there's the community, and then there's the staff. Most school districts have a fairly large staff, so that's a pretty big audience. Parents and community, they all have interest in school district websites. So you've got to kind of appeal to all of them, which is kind of unique in marketing. So
Yeah, and I think that is what makes it the most unique, is that you have so many things put together on one site, essentially, right? Even though it's going to be multiple sites, because you have very different audiences that need a lot of different information, right? So are you looking for lunch menus? Are you trying to find contact information, double checking the school calendars? All of that, is something that you need to have on those school district websites. But then, it's broken up, like you said, into the different types of schools, whether it's elementary schools, multiple in the same area, multiple middle schools, high schools, all of those things need to come together. So what do you usually recommend when somebody's looking to redesign their school district website with all of those factors in mind?
I think then the next question you got to answer before you can answer that is, how are we going to organize this? Is it going to be one giant site all crammed together, or is each school going to have their own site, or is each school going to have kind of a section of that website? What we found kind of works best typically is, one main domain with all the schools, but then each school maybe has their own dedicated section with a sub menu. So when you're in, let's use Janesville here, for example, when you're into the Craig High School, you can navigate around the sub menu for Craig High School specifically. So there's kind of a main district menu that has information for everybody that everybody could use typically. And then there's kind of sub menus to help you navigate around the school. Because inside that particular school, high school could have basketball and football and baseball and all those things. And so could the other high school in town, or so could the middle school. So you don't really want to cram it all into one site typically. Does that answer your question? Probably not.
I think it answers it, enough when it comes to, what do you recommend? And that is the planning, making sure that you've got a plan for how you want to break everything up. And I think, maybe smaller school districts can get away with certain things that larger school districts wouldn't be able to. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, if there's only one elementary and one high school, one site might be fairly straightforward, where the school district like Janesville, who's like seventh largest in the state, has a lot of different schools and a lot of different audiences. But, this is a good actual topic too for, like industrial manufacturing, for example. Who are your audiences? Should we be building sections out to answer questions for those audiences? So it's an interesting topic that can actually relate to a lot of different industries.
All right. I think, building the website with the user in mind is always going to be the most important thing you can do when designing it. A lot of agencies, not to put ourselves down for it, because we don't do this, but a lot of agencies want to win awards and have the best looking website. But sometimes it doesn't matter really that it's the flashiest website. In fact, most of the time it doesn't matter that's a flashy website. It needs to be a functional website. It needs to be easy for people to use, find the information that they want, take the next step, eliminate all the friction that has to use the cognitive load to figure out how to use the website that sometimes increases when it's a flashy design.
Yeah, and schools have to deal with things like ADA compliance and stuff like that. So, sometimes flashy isn't always the best for those things either. So.
The other thing when you're talking about design is mobile. It's that is going to be a very highly used, at least for the parents, the students. A lot of times, also, you need to make sure that you have a mobile design that's easy to use, easy to find information. Because you look at the analytics for a lot of these different sites, you do see a lot of mobile traffic for this particular audience.
Yeah, school districts are very high in mobile. So once we've kind of decided on the audience, if we're going to break it up by schools, how we're going to navigate the menus and stuff, next thing we got to decide is, what platform are we going to use to manage this site? And there's a lot of options out there. There's proprietary CMSs like CMS for Schools and some of those folks that do just websites for schools. There's WordPress, which is, our favorite. What else is out there, Evan? You got Embraco you could use. Kind of depends on your needs.
Yeah, and I think depending on the needs and budget, of course, is also a consideration for it. Also, how do you want to manage the site afterwards? Do you want to own the website? Or we do see a lot of proprietary systems like the one that you mentioned, and there's a few others out there that are big players in the industry, but you never own the website. And a lot of times you're left with a template website or a site that you can't really update. So do you recommend usually going with more of an open source content management system like WordPress?
We do prefer WordPress. I mean, it's very flexible. There's a lot of plugins and modules you can use. And, you can even set up like user access. So if you want somebody different to update like the high school versus the middle school versus the elementary school, you can actually set up some of those controls. And I guess at the end of the day, WordPress is something that, it's probably the most popular CMS out there. And, you're not locked in. It's not proprietary. So there's not cost in purchasing that software and upkeeping it. And you're not locked into a specific functionality that, some of these proprietary ones offer, but, you can't change it. And if you ever want to leave, good luck to you. You got to start over. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a website that you, as your district, actually owns. So instead of paying this monthly fee and perpetuity for it, you have a website. Obviously, you're going to need hosting, but that's going to be a much smaller cost than just leasing a website, and it offers a lot more ability to scale, at least in my opinion, because you do need a lot of features right now, and there could be more features that you want to add in the future. Are you changing your school management system? Are you changing any other software for it? How is it going to integrate with it? WordPress being the most popular content management system and being open source, it leads you to a lot of opportunities to make sure that it's always going to work well with what you need it to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just it. A lot of these proprietary CMSs, they're really rigid. So if you want your calendar to work a different way, or your lunch menu, or any of those types of things, you're pretty well stuck. You just got to use what they have, or, the updates of the page, the look and feel, or WordPress gives you that flexibility. But I was going to say, WordPress is, something you do have to maintain as well. Don't just, set up your site, leave it on a server and don't do anything. I mean, there's updates all the time for any content management system these days, and somebody does need to plan and be in charge of making sure that happens.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that would be the same with any content management system. Any website in general is, you need to make sure that you are maintaining everything, whether it's for security vulnerabilities or, just making sure that you have everything updated and it's all working properly, having eyes on it. I don't think any website should be set and forget.
So what's important on a school district website as far as content, and what should you install and use?
Well, one that you mentioned a little bit that I think is worth diving into more is the calendar integration. From what I see, that is one of the more commonly used features on a website. People want to see what's going on, what's happening. Any suggestions there that you have?
100% calendar is probably one of the most popular destinations. And, I think the big thing is you need to be able to filter your calendar. We've developed a really nice calendar for schools that works really well. But, basically you've got to be able to filter by, if you're a main district site with a bunch of schools, you want to be able to filter by the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, so they can dive down and see what's going on at their particular school. You want to filter by district wide. You want to filter maybe by sport. So there's a lot of different ways, but it's got to be easy for a parent to go in and say, okay, I want this high school football schedule. They shouldn't have to go to 16 different pages, to see that. They should be able to find it in the central calendar within a few clicks. So I think that's that's probably one of the most important things we see, and one of the frustrations when people come to us to have us work on their school district site is our calendar's a mess. We're trying to use Google Calendar or something like that. It doesn't display very well. It doesn't look good on mobile. How can we fix this? So filtering is my number one suggestion there.
Yeah, and as a parent that does have to go to school district websites, I certainly agree with that, right? I mean, a lot of times you're just trying to, remember all the different schedules that you have, double checking maybe that the dates that you were given by your child is correct. It makes it a lot easier when the calendar is set up with proper filtering, easy to use, mobile friendly, everything we've already been talking about with it. The other thing that I think is important is having a good section for news and updates, things that are able to display on there, whether it's district-wide announcements or school-specific ones, similar to the calendar, but more announcements versus schedules.
Yeah, there's always news going on at schools, and a lot of schools have just kind of taken to Facebook for that news, but it's not really easy to find and organize there. It's just kind of whatever the latest post was, and then a bunch of scrolling where good news or announcement module can again have filtering by school, by date, by sport, event, whatever you're trying to do. And one of the things that we've done with those news and events and calendaring modules that we use for schools is allow teachers to or public or whoever to kind of suggest news and upload it, and then it goes to an administrator that can approve it, edit it before it goes live. So kind of takes a little bit of the work off of some of the administrators that, for calendar and events, they can, and news, they can basically have their users push that stuff into the website, and then they can edit it, make sure it goes in the right spot, versus having to build it all. So some cool tools for schools there for, editing and allowing you to collect user feedback.
Yeah. And another feature that we see a lot of times that is very important is going to be the actual links to other resources, right? The website's not going to have everything that you need, but it should be the hub to get to everywhere you need to go. So whether you have, different links for forms, policies, other education materials, other software that's being used to look up the grades or put money on the lunch books, all of those need to be easy to find as well.
Absolutely. And then I think the other big one is schools love PDFs. So if there's a good document management system in place, for downloading permission slips or forms or those types of things, that should be part of the CMS and part of the planning. How do we make sure that they're up to date? How do we maintain them? How do we get rid of them when they're old? How do we organize the file structure? So some kind of file management system is really important for schools as well.
Yeah, and the nice part about having a system, like we were talking about with WordPress, is that that content management system allows you to have all of those different features, and they're customizable too, right? So you can make sure that they're going to work for you versus, here's the general, this is all that we have. Make sure that you try to force the software to change the way that you handle all of those things.
The other one that I see a lot of schools using and moving towards is like social media integration. So a lot of times we'll see feeds from like their YouTube channel that's really well organized on the website, or from their Facebook page, or some of those types of things. So they can actually pull in individual feeds. My son's a football player, so you could pull the Facebook feed for the booster club or the football right onto the football page on the website, so that it keeps the content fresh, because a lot of those clubs and organizations use the social media stuff. So that's another nice feature to include in a district site.
What about marketing? Do you see that ever being a focus at all, or a need for school districts when they're working through the website plan?
You read my mind. I think I was going to talk about that next. And a lot of people don't think school districts should really need to market, but the reality is a lot of them do. For example, there's a school we worked with recently that, had a virtual school, and in order to get funding, they needed X amount of students. So, they hired us to actually help them market the virtual school and drive registrations for that school so that they would achieve the funding they needed. So good example of marketing, that was done through social media and paid ads and some of those types of things. Another example might be more of a private school that needs to recruit. That audience for the parents becomes so important, and how do we get that in front of the right parents? So a lot of options out there and a lot of needs for marketing, believe it or not.
Yeah, and also just school districts in general. A lot of times they're going to need to go through a referendum. And, when you have a website that markets your school district well, where you can, showcase all the benefits that you provide to the community, it gives you an opportunity to maybe have a better chance at that referendum passing.
Absolutely. And we've been a part of actually quite a few different school district referendum campaigns where we're actually doing some advertising and some of that. That's usually not paid for by the school. Advertising for referendums, that's typically paid for by like a third party group that's interested in seeing the school, referendum pass. But, there's a lot of different needs and stuff out there for that. So certainly can help you guys if you're looking to get a referendum passed in your district as well.
Yeah. And, I think that we covered a lot with the website already in the marketing. Is there anything else you'd want to add when considering redesigning the website?
I just think planning is really key, and then maybe user testing when you get it all done. Make sure that the elementary school kids can use it all the way up to the high school kids. Test it with some parent groups. Get some good feedback. Before you go live, and make sure you haven't overlooked anything, because school districts get a lot of publicity and a lot of eyeballs, and when it goes live, it's got to be right, or you're going to get comments and feedback, negative feedback. Parents are quick to complain. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. Making sure that you have the plan, everything else. Plus, we do, always recommend having the contact information and staff directory as part of the website too. So it does make it easier to complain, I guess, if you don't do a good job on it. And user testing, is important. And I'm glad you brought that up, because you have so many different audiences, so many different use cases. That's why a lot of times we do recommend, putting together those user stories. What type of users go in there? How are they going to do that? Just mapping that out is all part of that planning process to make sure that, people are going to be able to do that easily when they land on your website, regardless of, what they're looking for or what type of visitor they are.
Yeah. I think the other thing that some school districts have overlooked in the past, and it's starting to change, we're starting to see a lot more like marketing roles at schools now, or like somebody that's in charge of the communications. But, a lot of schools never even had like a brand guideline, right? So a lot of sites we've seen are taking over have like Comic Sans fonts and just random GIFs and stuff all over the place. And, schools nowadays need to look professional, and, that stuff, you really should have some brand guidelines, and what kind of font should we be using? How do we, communicate logos and colors and stuff across a lot of different communities? So, even having places maybe for the community to download logos and see your brand guidelines and colors and stuff like that might be handy for a school.
Yeah, definitely. Keeping it consistent. That's going to be important for any type of branding with it, and having those guidelines available and makes it a lot easier for people to follow.
So I'm going to give you a shameless plug I'm kind of proud of. We were just recently selected for the University of Wisconsin as a primary pre-approved vendor. So look for some of our work hopefully soon coming from the UW as well, UW school near you. So love to help you guys out if you're in the school, college, high school, elementary, district, private schools. We've seen a lot of it, done a lot of it. We'd love to be of service to you if you're looking at redesigning a website or not happy with the site you have. So keep us in mind.
Yeah, even if you're just looking for a plan or what's the best way to do it, we're happy to assist with the knowledge that we have and see if we can come together on that.
Yep, and if you've been living under a rock, you're a communication person for a school and you haven't addressed ADA compliance, that's something you need to look at yesterday. So give us a call on that as well. That we've seen and been a part of schools getting demand letters and some of those types of things. It's not a good situation. So make sure you're looking at that stuff. Accessibility.
Yeah, better to do now than wait until you get one of those letters.
Exactly. So that's all I got today. Evan, anything else you want to talk about?
That's all I have too. So if you're listening, just make sure that you like and subscribe to the podcast. And yeah, we'll be talking soon.
All right. See you, Evan. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Foremost Media Marketing Chat podcast. If you want to stay on top of your marketing game, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more episodes, show transcripts, and marketing insights, go to foremostmedia.com.